I'd like to introduce one of our newest DAC members, Diversity Advisory Committee members, Dr. Rick Kittles, who's at the City of Hope. And we are so happy to have you join our happy family. I think that you will gain a lot from the experience, and I know we will gain a lot from your knowledge and from your background, especially in cancer and cancer health disparities research. So what I wanted to talk to you today about really was not just coming onto the DAC, but your experience as a cancer researcher and health disparities in cancer. And we can focus a little bit on what you did recently at the Heart Workshop in Houston, Texas, where I saw your presentation. It was brilliant, as always. I saw last year's as well. And if you could just tell us a little bit about what your current research efforts are and what you think the health disparities research community needs to know.
Okay, thanks. Well, first let me say that I'm very happy to be a part of DAC and in particular to help provide some insight and guidance into probably a very sort of historic and important organization. And so I'm honored to be a part of that. And of course, I'm definitely going to learn a lot from interacting with a lot of the other committee members. As a cancer researcher, it's interesting because I think back when I finished my PhD back in 2000, where the field was. And I'm always thinking back in terms of how things are changing, and they're constantly evolving, constantly changing. And we know science and technology is one that, you know, folks get really, really creative and really excited to develop new assays, new technology, to find, determine new science paradigms. But the problem, though, is that we use all this new science and technology to answer old questions, in a sense. So, meaning, we're trying to answer the same old questions using the new technology, and I think that's sort of been a problem in a lot of ways. Is that we're not thinking necessarily out of the box in terms of rethinking some of these old issues. And so that's where I think a lot of this has to go, because we get so caught up with the technology a lot of times that we don't necessarily think about, what are the sort of the grassroots, homegrown, down, in the weeds sort of questions that need to be addressed. So my work focuses mainly on cancer genetics. And so I have very strong training in genetics and epidemiology. Some folks may call me a genetic epidemiologist, but I focus on the genetics of complex disease and traits in people of African descent. That's been my focus from day one. I study Black folk or people of color. And my research has evolved, just like, this whole area of cancer research has evolved. Mainly, it's evolved because of my understanding of that genetics alone is not going to help us. Genetics alone is not going to answer all the questions we have in terms of risk and outcomes and differential mortality rates and all of that. What's clear is that, obviously complex diseases have a biological component to them. But they're due, and the prognosis a lot of times is due to how that individual interacts with the environment, be it diet, lifestyle, or whatever. And so we have to take that into account when trying to understand sort of risk and outcomes. And so my understanding has evolved a lot, so now I'm looking at a lot of gene environment stuff. Before it was mainly sequencing and doing a lot of genetics, looking at variants in germline variants. And then we went to somatic changes in tumors and tissues. And now we're trying to say, okay, this is the context in which the cancer or the body has these profiles, the genetic profiles, the genetic context. But let's place that into a more of a social, physical context too, from the environment. And so that's sort of where things are are getting really neat and exciting, because we're looking at placing susceptibility into context, be it, as I said, sort of this physical context of the physical environment, or even the social and behavioral context. And that's where things are getting a lot more exciting.
Okay, well, that sounds exciting. And I know we have a number of fellows who are going to be very happy to work with you down the road. They're involved in cancer research. I know that a number of them have been thinking about ways they can go about developing their own expertise and doing some cross training with the different fellows and some of the DAC members. So we've been talking about that. In fact, that came up in the fellow circle last month at the June SAB meeting, is looking at ways to get more of them involved with each other in terms of peer collaborative research efforts. And like I said, we have quite a pool of cancer fellows, so those that are studying cancer and that are really interested in health disparities research. So, so this is perfect. I think you're coming at a great time, an optimal time. And so one of the things that we focus on here at Keystone is mentoring. So I'd love to get your ideas on how you feel about mentoring. What do you think of as, you know, sort of the best practices of mentoring? And maybe if you want to share a personal experience, you know, your favorite mentor or your favorite mentoring experience.
Well, it's funny because I am so committed to mentoring and mentorship. And it's probably mainly because I did not have a lot of mentors when I was starting off. So, you know, what's interesting in terms of my experience in my career, my mentors started emerging later on as I evolved and started hitting situations where I needed guidance at that moment, you know, and so the mentors emerged. But early on in my career, I really didn't have it. And so I was like bouncing off the walls in a sense, you know, going down this way, going this way, and not really having a focused plan. And that was because I didn't have any mentorship. And and the main reason for that probably was there wasn't many people who were doing what I was doing who looked like me, who I felt comfortable with. Now, there were people who were doing what I was doing. Obviously, I wasn't the first, but they were not necessarily the folks that I could have been responsive to in terms of their mentorship. And so I was committed after that to say, look, you know, I have to make sure that I grab hold of some of these young folk and mentor them early on before they start making mistakes like I did. Because, you know, my graduate experience, while it was great, at the same time, it could have been a lot better if I had mentorship. And so it wasn't until I started several years into my faculty position that I started getting mentorship. And so that's good and bad in a sense. It was good in that, I mean, it was bad in that obviously I made some mistakes early on, but it was good in that I just did what I wanted to do.
So you learned trial by fire, right?
Trial by fire, exactly. But it's not something that I would suggest people do. But
not a best practice.
Right. But the other thing is this, though. When I was in grad school, I remember I did have some mentors, but they weren't very strong, or what I call holistic mentors, in a sense of giving you everything you need. And so I learned that I had to do what we call like the cafeteria type of learning from the mentors, meaning you pick and choose what you liked, what inspired you, and what got you excited, what you needed to hear, but not everything, because some of the mentors actually were not necessarily the best mentors, but they did have nuggets of knowledge and guidance that helped me. And so I tell the students that too. I said, look, sometimes you might not find the best overall holistic mentor, but you'll get some nuggets, and you're able, you know, if you're aware, if you're consciously aware that you're just picking and choosing, it is an okay situation. Because sometimes, you know, we can tend to be, all of us, you know, when we are in that mentee relationship, sometimes we can be overwhelming. We can high maintenance or whatever. And so I'm always, I tell the students, I'm like, you can't kind of like overwhelm your mentor because,
have a plan.
Right. Yeah, you have to have a plan. You develop a plan.
Yeah.
And that's the key to mentorship, is like helping to develop a plan and strategies to overcome barriers or whatever that emerge on in life. So, but yeah, I have very strong feelings about mentorship.
Okay. Well, do you consider yourself to be a good mentor?
Yeah, I believe so. I really believe so. And it's mainly, like I said, because of early on in my career, my lack of having a strong mentor, and I felt that that had I've had one, I would have been probably a lot stronger in that time frame. And so I want to make sure that that doesn't happen to the next round of folk.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, and welcome to the Diversity Advisory Committee here at Keystone. And we're happy to have you on board.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.